Welcome to Year 2 Phonics. We're up to lesson 60. Can you believe it? Today is a review lesson and we're going to review all the different graphemes for the long sound E, and we are also going to review our prefix, our chameleon prefix, in or im, meaning in, on, toward or not. So let's see, that's our prefix. What are all our different graphemes for our long E sound? Okay, you ready? Let's have a look. We've got double E, as in feet. We've got split vowel E, like concrete. We've got open syllable E on its own, like in equal. We've got IE making E, like in peace. We've got EA making E, like in eat. Thought I didn't have any blue tack on that one. And we've got EY making E as in key. Now, why have I put all these up here for you? Because you're going to need something to write on and something to write with, because it's a review lesson and we do dictation. So you're going to write a sentence for me that has lots of these E sounds in them. And remember that as we go, if you need a little bit of help, you can wait and listen along to the video and I will help you with which spelling of E you need to use in the words. If you hear the sentence and you just want to go ahead and write it and have a go, you can do that too. You just pause the video, have a go, and then come back and listen and check your sentence when you're ready. So, something to write on, something to write with. We all good to go? Fantastic. Here's your sentence today. It's a bit of interesting punctuation you might want to think about in there today. Our sentence today is, crikey! She shrieked at the hairy insect on the leaf. Crikey! She shrieked at the hairy insect on the leaf. What kind of punctuation do you think you might be using in that sentence? Someone is saying something and they're exclaiming it because they're a little bit shocked at this hairy insect they have found on the leaf. So let's see how we go writing that sentence. So remember, we're going to need a capital at the start. We're actually starting with the person talking and we're going to have a full stop at the end. So let's see how you go. If you're ready to have a go of writing it, you can go ahead. If you want to wait for some support, let's get going now. First word, crikey. Crikey. She is shrieking it. So it's exclaiming, it's like, ah! So it's going to have an exclamation mark after it. But how are we going to spell it? It's going to start with a capital because it's the start of our sentence. And it's in speech marks. Okay. Crikey is spelt with EY at the end, making the E sound. The I in crikey is just an open syllable I. Okay, crikey, crikey. Have a go writing crikey. Put it in speech marks and put an exclamation mark. Have a go. Might be new, this kind of punctuation. See. Doesn't matter if you don't get it right, we'll check it at the end. You ready for the next bit? You've written crikey. Remember, you can pause me anytime you need to while you're writing and then just unpause when you're ready for the next part. So crikey, she shrieked. She shrieked. The E in shrieked is IE. And remember, in shrieked, it's past tense, so it's going to finish in ED. She shrieked. Crikey, she shrieked. You got that? Write it down. Okay, so you've got crikey, she shrieked. What's she shrieking at? At the insect. That one you can do. At the insect. There's that in that we've been learning. At the insect. Next part. On the leaf. And the E in leaf is EA. Full stop. The end. You ready to check your whole sentence? Crikey! She shrieked at the insect on the leaf. See what I did there? Speech marks, exclamation. Make sure you've got them in. Well done. Are you ready to have a look and check your work? Let's see. Let's take down all these E's. Are you ready? E is in feet. E is in peace. E is in eat. E as in key. E as in equal. E as in concrete. Let's check our sentence. We're going to look really carefully. Remember, when we're checking, we're going to look up to our computer screen, or your computer screen might be your iPad. You might just be able to look across, but you're going to look really carefully at what it is you're copying, and then down at your own work. And you're going to be looking up and back lots to check. Make sure you've got it exactly the same. And if you don't, just write it again underneath. Okay, give it a little bit of an edit, write it again underneath. So, we've got here, remember I talked about some punctuation and stuff there? Crikey! There it is, exclamation, and she is saying that, so it's in the speech marks. She shrieked at the hairy insect on the leaf. Have a read of yours. Do you have all the words? So check first, make sure it makes sense. Got your capitals, your full stop. Read through, make sure you've got all the words. Yep, excellent. Now let's check really carefully for our spelling. So crikey, have a look up here. It's the K making the K sound, EY making E. She, check up and down each word one at a time. Shrieked, make sure you've got IE and that K again, not CK. At the hairy, Y making E. The air, AIR for air. Insect, I think that one you might have. On the leaf, make sure you've got EA on leaf, full stop. Parts of that one were a little bit easier today, but then we had that tricky punctuation in there as well. How did you go? Fantastic. Guess what we do now? We've done our writing, now we've got our reading passage. You ready to read a story with me? It is a really interesting story today. Our story is about Tracy and Pete, and they go on an odyssey. It's a strange word, isn't it? Odyssey ends in the E sound. An odyssey is a long voyage or journey with lots of changes. It's a bit of an exciting adventure, this odyssey. So let's read the story about Tracy and Pete and find out what happens on their odyssey. Let's take down our crikey shrieking person, hairy insects, and put up our story. You will get a copy of this on your screen to read as well, because it is a long story, so it's quite small text, but you will get a chance to read this on your own later on too. I'm going to read it first and you have a listen. Listen for that word odyssey. See if you can see what some of the events are that might happen in this odyssey, and then we'll have a chat about it and we'll read it together. Pete and Tracy were trusted to complete an odyssey to receive the key from the magical kingdom. I'm interested already, are you? This was needed to free their queen from the evil chief. It's always been my dream to go beyond the valley and make history, stated Tracy. They trudged across the valley and up the steep mountain before the deep snow made it impossible to reach the peak. I'm beginning to feel uneasy about this, Pete moaned. Neither of them were prepared for the giant imprints in the snow. Ooh, there's some twists and turns, some changes of fortune happening. What could have left these tracks? Tracy exclaimed. She was inspired to keep going, but Pete began to screech. Ooh, wonder what Pete's screeching about. Look out! A giant scaly insect, shrieked Pete. Tracy swung around and with a wry smile greeted her old mate Bertie Beetle. Pete saw the key hanging around Bertie's tummy. Tracy reached for the key and Pete screamed with relief, Let's get out of here! We need to free the Queen. Whoa, wonder what's going to happen next. Interesting start to a story. It's not the whole story, is it? So, did you hear lots of E words in there? Did you hear some in and im words? I heard words with those suffixes in there. And, not those suffixes, those prefixes. I heard words with those prefixes. And I heard lots of E words. Let's read it together now. I'm going to scoop the phrases and you're going to echo read. You're going to read just after me. Are you ready? I want you to read loudly and clearly and with expression, because remember, we don't have boring robot readers, because nothing worse than listening to a story where everything's all the same and there's no expression. So we're going to bring this story to life. So you ready? You're going to copy after me. Pete and Tracy were trusted to complete an odyssey, to retrieve the key from the magical kingdom. This was needed to free their queen from the evil chief. It's always been my dream to go beyond the valley and make history, stated Tracy. Good job. They trudged across the valley and up the steep mountain before the deep snow made it impossible to reach the peak. I'm beginning to feel uneasy about this, Pete moaned. Neither of them were prepared for the giant imprints in the snow. What could have left these tracks? Tracy exclaimed. She was inspired to keep going. But Pete began to screech. Look out! A giant scaly insect! Shrieked Pete. Good job. Tracy swung around and with a wry smile greeted her old mate Bertie Beetle. Pete saw the key hanging around Bertie's tummy. Tracy reached for the key and Pete screamed with relief. Let's get out of here. We need to free the queen. Wow, I wonder what's going to happen next. Now, in this story, in this second paragraph here, it talks about they trudged across the valley. You know what that means, trudged? If you trudge, it means you're walking with really heavy steps and it's really, really hard. So the authors made that choice of the word trudged because it makes it sound like it's such hard work walking up the mountain. What would happen if we put another word for walking in there? Like we just said, they walked across the valley. Would it sound as hard? What if they skipped across the valley? That definitely wouldn't be hard, would it? We wouldn't think they were having a hard time. It wouldn't be hard walking if they skipped or just walked across the valley. So they trudged because one of the reasons why they're probably trudging is because there's deep snow. So if you've ever had to walk in really soft sand or you've been lucky enough to walk in snow, really deep snow or really soft sand, it's that trudging. It's really heavy on your legs. So the author has chosen to use that word to show us how hard this odyssey is and how hard they're walking. And it's not any kind of mountain, it's a steep mountain up really high. So they're working really hard to walk up this mountain. So it's probably why Pete's beginning to moan. He's feeling a bit uneasy, which means he's not too sure about what's happening. Okay, how about at the end? Tracy turns around. So Pete shrieks, "Look out, a giant scaly insect," and he's really scared. And Tracy swung around with a wry smile. Can you remember that wry smile? It's kind of like a half, like a crooked smile. Why do you think Tracy's smiling there? Pete's really scared, and then Tracy turns around with a little bit of a smile on her face, a wry smile. We might even call it a smirk. It's another word for it. Yeah, because she's actually spotted that big scaly insect that Pete is scared of, she actually knows them. It's Birdie Beetle, it's her friend. So she's not scared. She's going, Pete, what are you so worried about? That's just Birdie Beetle. He's my mate. So she recognised that and Pete didn't. So that's why she was smiling and Pete was so scared. Can you imagine? Poor Pete turning around and then there's this big insect and Tracy's just smiling going, oh, Pete, don't worry. It's just my mate Birdie. It was a really good story. What we need you to do now is to reread this story 3 times to yourself. Read it really carefully, scoop the phrases, see if you can pick out and find all the different ways that the E sound has been represented in the words in the story, and see if you can find where the prefixes in or im have been used. After you've done that, you'll go on with your independent activity, which is, I'm just going to take this down and put the activity up. Your independent activity is to continue the story in the Odyssey, I think. It is indeed, because it sounds like such an interesting story. We want you to continue it a little bit more. So reread the passage 3 times. Don't forget to make it sound interesting. The more you read it, the better you'll be able to read it and make it more interesting. And then write the next paragraph or 2 of the Odyssey. What happens? Do they get the key to the Queen? Does Birdie go with them on the journey? Do they ride on Birdie's back? What happens to the evil chief when they get there and try to rescue the Queen? Does Birdie catch him or sit on him, or how does the story end? Do they get to rescue the Queen? You're the authors that get to decide that. Finish this Odyssey, make it really exciting. Bonus points if you can use any E words or words with in or im in them as well. See how you go. That's an extra challenge. Thank you so much for working with me today. You have done a great job reviewing our prefix of im and in, that chameleon prefix that changes depending on the base or the root word, and reviewing all those different ways of making the E, all the different graphemes that represent that long E phoneme. And remember our little thing? These cheeky monkeys begin to shriek as a thief steals their treats. All the different ways of doing E. Well done. Thank you so much. I'll catch you next time.